Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Circle Debate Podcast. Once again, this is the host of Devious One, Ivan C. Alongside with my brothers from another mother, I have the Karen Beaters of Beaters, the Matt Seidels, the Cordonas, the Steamboats, the Max Kellerman of the podcast, which is Mr. Matthew Steamboat. And we also have the great American hero with the 12-inch pythons, not 20-inch, 12-inch. And he'll point the finger at you, say no, and you. And that is the great American hero, Mike Lopez. And ladies and gentlemen, today we have a special guest, and that is a former pro wrestler himself. He's going to go ahead and give us the stories about it, and that is Mr. Chris Kennedy. How are you, sir? How's it going?
Good. I'm good, man. I consider myself a bit of the Matt Striker of the podcast world, so thank you.
Definitely. All right, so today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to kick it off, and we're going to get, obviously, interview Mr. Kennedy over here. So he's going to go ahead and give us his, background of how it began and where it all started. So I'll ask the first question. How did it start? What got you to professional wrestling, and where did you start training?
Oh, man. It's a quick, long story, so I'll condense it to best I can. I'll include names. I'll do first names. I don't want to break kayfabe when it comes down to actual wrestlers' names. That in high school, I had met a friend named Eddie. Eddie was, by the time he was 12, a Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt out of the Torrance shop. He went to my high school. We just started rolling. He would teach me stuff. I was like, I have no idea what this is. This is before MMA. This is just wow. Somehow he had gotten a notice on whatever version of the internet existed in the early 2000s about this park thing. It was basically like a kumite in a public park in Orange County. It was going to be his jiu-jitsu students versus some backyard wrestlers at a park in Buena Park. We show up to this thing, and they have actual, moving rope, like you use on a U-Haul, strewn up across, 5 or 6 different trees to look like a wrestling ring, but it's all, polygonal and, not a square. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, this is sick. I love pro wrestling. Let's do this. So I just jump in there and just fake fight these people. I didn't, I ended up becoming friends with everybody on, I guess you could say, the pro wrestling team, which included a guy named Buddy, a few other people that are completely irrelevant to the story, but Buddy is definitely a primary player along with Eddie. I started hanging out with Buddy. We start backyard wrestling in his backyard. It's dirt, it's grimy, it's ghetto. My first match with him, I didn't know that they really fought. So I go in there, I throw a drop kick, as you would in pro wrestling. It barely misses, it barely lands, and he's like, what the fuck? Hit me. I'm like, oh shit, what did I get myself into? We start beating the shit out of each other. He's about 250. I'm about 150 at the time. I'm small. He's a big, large. You think Bubba Ray Dudley in his teens.
Oh.
Yeah. So we just get down and dirty in it. He beats the shit out of me. I do my best. Not much I can do. I don't let him win. He legitimately wins. I think he gets me in a camel clutch, but a real one, like a potato, really fucking puts it in there. And everyone's like, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. That was awesome. You should come back and do this every week. I'm hooked. I'm in it every week for months. This goes on for, I think, the entire summer. He and I then, he I think, finds a school online. Again, I don't know. The internet definitely existed for sure, but I don't think Google did. Mm-hmm. So he is like, dude, I found this online wrestling company. We can go train there instead of doing it in my backyard and getting muddy and beating the shit out of each other all the time. So we start going to this place in Anaheim called Revolution Pro, which is one of the premier pro wrestling indie leagues at the time. Revolution Pro was ran by American Wild Child and a wrestler named Blitzkrieg, who both had dark matches on WCW, during the NWO era, early 2000s, late 99. And I'm like, okay, this is dope. My mom signs me up. She pays I think the monthly fee instead of the weekly fee, something like that. They always do a deal where it's cheaper to buy in bulk.
Right.
So I do that. I'm young. I'm 15 or 16. So not only am I super green, I'm a huge mark. I'm showing up in crop top BWO shirts, acting like I'm Stevie Richards, I just didn't know any better. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to be a mark. I had to learn the hard way that you can't be that guy. You have to pretend that wrestling is real. It's, it's sacred. But through a couple of months of training there with guys like Super Dragon, Excalibur, Ultra Taro, Rising Sun, Disco Machine, Shogun. Did I say Shogun? No, Shogun was a guy. He went through there. That was like the core trainers, including American Wild Child. They started me off as a ref. I've refed hundreds of matches. I can name drop every celebrity that you might have heard of that I've refed a match for, whether it was Spanky, who became Brian Kendrick,
right?
Frankie Kazarian, Samoa Joe. Fuck, man, so many. Goddamn. Loki, who became Kevon or Kevon, whatever the fuck his name was.
First MLW champion.
Yes, exactly. And my first match was against Logan X, who runs MLW. We're talking about MPW, Millennium Pro Wrestling, out here in Woodland Hills.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So, I'm just getting put through the ringer. I'm learning. I'm loving it. And I'm finally time to wrestle. My first match against Logan Paul. They give me what in the lucha world is considered a comedy gimmick by the name of El Gallinero, which the gimmick is a cockfighter, but not a guy who fights chickens. The chicken itself that does the fighting. And it was Halloween's pants, the pro wrestler Halloween that used to do his face paint like a pumpkin in WCW.
Yep.
It was his pants that he left in the back of the office, all sweaty and grimy. It was his pants, some red sweater, and then a crudely made leather actual cane mask repainted with a bird on it to look like a phoenix, but it just looked bad, and it hurt because it was raw leather and it wasn't broken in. So I was always adjusting it. I could barely see, taking shots to the face, even if they weren't stiff. I was just like, I'm feeling every one of these because it's just like leather into my jaw every time. So I ran that gimmick for a while, maybe 5 to 6 months as a comedy gimmick. Revolution Pro had something called the Super Rev Tournament, which was held out of the Anaheim Marketplace. It's like an outdoor swap meet. And that's when they decided to take my character more seriously and have me go heel, even though I don't think I was ever over in any direction, just to see if I could do just like a serious character. And I forget if I wrestled that match. It was a singles match. I think it was a tag match. I think it was like me and someone else versus like Rising Sun and Excalibur, and we actually won that match, and it was insane. I was like, oh shit, I get to win one? Because I was a jobber. That character's a jobber. I was basically a lucha Spike Dudley who always lost. Yeah, it was great. I even did the acid drop as a finisher, but it was slightly different because I would just jump off the top rope with it instead of like stair climb up the turnbuckles.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then a couple more months of that, talked to American Wild Child. He's like, hey man, it's time for you to get your own gimmick. We're going down to Tijuana. We got a guy that makes costumes, $100. Here's the diagram. Draw what you want. We'll come back with your new costume. We went over that gimmick. It was something I came up with by the name of Cyberspace. It was supposed to be like an internet luchador. And it was like silver and blue. And I had the Rey Mysterio mask, but it was really cool looking. And that was the first time I had a gimmick that was my own. I did that for a couple more months. There was some issues with where we were training that it had moved a couple of times from warehouse to warehouse. Eventually ended up in the backyard of American Wild Child, which was kind of out of my jurisdiction. I couldn't get there. I was still like 16. I didn't drive. So that is sort of how that journey ended for me. I didn't want it to. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a car. So things just kind of get past me. And that is, in a nutshell, the long and short of just the career itself without telling any stories in between.
All right.
Now, how much, or were there any like ideas that you had along the way that maybe the promoters said, oh, maybe not this, but I have this in mind for you? You know, was there anything like that?
Not really, as far as like ideas. I always did what I was told. not in a bad way, because I mean I looked up to these guys. I was definitely the youngest one on that roster by a long shot. When I sat down with American Wild Child for my new gimmick, the cyberspace gimmick, he loved it immediately. I was like, oh, and we had a girl, Sarah, who was kind of, I would say she was kind of a ring rat at first, which is basically the pro wrestling term for a groupie, turned manager for us, and we became friends. And I'm like, oh, I could be cyberspace. I have like these circuits, like kind of like motherboards on my outfit, drawn in to look like, like the connectors. She could be my manager. We can call her Virus. We can spell it Viress. And he's like, I love it. Let's do it. That's perfect. That's awesome. But that was the first time I had an original idea that he agreed with. Other than that, it was just, he would tell me who my match was against, who wins, what my gimmick was, how the gimmick's supposed to be portrayed, because that gimmick had been passed down through the lucha world. And even after me, there was a Gallinero Dos, who I don't know who played that character, but I know for a fact Gallinero Tres was Scorpion Sky Andrews.
Oh, so Scorpio Sky.
So Scorpio Sky got the third version of that character back in the day. He had come out of Hard Knocks with Mike Knox, who I think he had gone through the backyard route like I did. He found a school out in San Bernardino. And then he started coming to Rev Pro with us. And then after I had left, I heard he got the third version of that gimmick before he became, Scorpion Sky, who you now know today is a beast on the AEW scene. But yeah, we put our matches together. He wouldn't even tell us, like, he'd be like, 10 minutes, this guy wins. I'm like, cool. We would come up with the match. He'd like ideas. That was about it. He wasn't a dictator of any kind. He was super cool to work with and super fun.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Cool. Mr. Steve Mode, I know you got a question.
I think you told me a little bit off camera a while back. You had a match with Samoa Joe?
I did. That would be the biggest name I've ever wrestled, and it was a very early Samoa Joe match. He was training out of Huntington Beach under, I believe, Cleveland Red was his name. He had a finisher called the Sex Drive, which is really cool. But this was when Samoa Joe was, everybody on the indie scene knew him, but he was not international yet. Mm-hmm. He had come and gone through like all the indie scenes. UPW out of Huntington Beach was huge at the time. Yep. UPW tried their best to be like WWE. They were the big muscle men. The John Cena's went through there. Ruckus, Horseshoe went through there. I think Brian Kendrick had come out of there at the time. Where Revolution Pro was Puru Resu, which is a combination of Japanese and luchador, he was pure American. He only wanted the muscle-bound giant, just, who you think of with American wrestling. And Joe had come out of that area, and I had a match with him. It was awesome. I hit him with my finisher. I lost. I forgot what he beat me with, but it was cool. It was just a moment in my life that I can say that was pretty neat.
That's what was awesome. It like working with them?
It was fine. I mean, like, we had a lot of special guests come in. So besides the core cast of the Revolution Pro, we always tried to bring in big names, to push our guys. And it was fine. He was like, oh, hi, I'm Joe. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I don't remember a whole lot of it. I mean, like, he would people like that, when they were like guest spotting, would show up the day up. We put our match together that day and then have the match and then go about our life. So it wasn't like I got to hang out with them. It was basically just like a handshake. Here's the match. Here's the finish. Thanks for coming. That's about it.
Okay.
Cool, though.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Any other names besides Samoa Joe?
That I wrestled, or?
Yeah.
I mean, fuck. I'm trying to think if there's anybody noteworthy. I mean, reffing matches and wrestling matches, I think I gave you pretty much the list. I can't think of anybody else that today would still be relevant. I mean, I had ref matches with Joey Ryan back when he was in a tag team called the Lost Boys, which was kind of like a goth Hardy Boy gimmick with a guy named Scott Lost.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Scott Lost, yes. I remember him.
Yeah, Scott Lost was the shit. Lost Boys were cool. Yeah. This is before Joey Ryan did the whole, gimmick, the cock punch gimmick.
Yeah.
Los Cubanos came through there, which were super dope. Those guys were really on top of their game. They were like like super fast luchadors, kind of like power flyers. Okay. So I've wrestled for XPW and FMLL, if that counts. That's kind of cool. If anybody remembers XPW,
Yep.
Dane Douglas was the
Yes,
champ,
I do.
and Terry Funk was with him too.
you probably shouldn't remember XPW for all the right reasons. That was cool. That came about when American Wild Child had gotten a hold of Rob Black, or Rob Black had gotten a hold of us somehow and wanted to do a cross promotion angle because we were pushing Super Dragon versus somebody in that company. I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to put Super Dragon in XPW because they were looking for luchadors because they didn't have any. But we did like an invasion angle where they had us all in the first row of the audience at the Grand Olympic Auditorium, which is the home base for XPW at the time. And our angle was we hang out in the audience, and then like Pogo the Clown, who is this literal 7,000-pound man dressed like a giant clown, just like John Wayne Gacy. That was his gimmick. He was cutting a promo. We jump the gate. We attack him. He lariats the hell out of me, stiff as a board. I like to do that backflip thing where it looks not the Mariposa where you twirl like Rikishi, but where you actually backflip and land on your neck like you got knocked the fuck out. I was gonna do that anyways and supersell it. I didn't have to. He hit me so hard I actually did it. And then I remember like looking at the lights like, where am I? And he's like, powder out, powder out. I'm like, oh shit, I should get out of the ring. And so I was like, oh yeah, thank you for reminding me to leave the ring right now because I don't want to die. But that was the extent of the XPW footage, of my experience with XPW, with just getting clotheslined by the biggest man I've ever seen in my whole life. But it was cool because we got to hang out backstage a lot and like sort of share locker rooms with like Axel Rotten, and there's New Jack, and I'm an ECW mark to the core. So I'm back there with these like past the ECW prime wrestlers. I'm just like, fuck, that's New Jack. I'm terrified. That's fucking Vic Grimes over there. Holy shit. That's every porn star I've ever heard of because the company is ran by a porn management. So I'm just like, I'm 15, 16. I should not be here. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
I mean,
actually,
good thing they didn't put you against New Jack.
Oh yeah, right.
yeah. Oh no, dude, I'm not. No, yeah. Hashtag mass transit. Rest in peace.
Right.
The cool thing was I was either backstage or I had hard camera seating for the New Jack Vic Grimes incident, which was when New Jack threw Vic Grimes through 55 tables from the top of the rafter and deliberately tried to kill him. And he hit his head on the turnbuckle, and he Owen Harted outside of the ring, and everybody thought he was actually dead. I was there for that, and that's unfortunately crazy because, I mean, like, he actually almost literally died.
Oh,
if you watch the footage, It is – I don't know how Vic Grimes survived that. But that's one of those stories that I can tell that's just like, wow, man, I was there for that. That's pretty hardcore for a pro wrestling fan.
oh yeah, most definitely. Most
Yeah.
Did you
definitely.
travel a lot? Were you like out of California for these
Not
events?
out of California, close. We went to we had a few matches down in various parking lots, like out in Fontana. I wrestled for, I think it was either FMLL or CMLL at the Pico Rivera Sports Arena, which I don't think exists anymore, but it was basically a bullfighting ring.
Yeah.
So the ring was on dirt. XPW had come through there. Some prominent lucha companies had come through there. I forget what I was there for. I think it was XPW. And I think I reffed a Sandman match. For some reason, I remember like Sandman like yelling at me, and I was in the ring. And I know I didn't wrestle Sandman because you don't forget something like that. So I think I was reffing a Sandman match against some random lucha. I think it was against, what was his name? Luchador, big hair with the horns.
Psychosis?
Yeah,
Yes!
Psychosis.
You nailed it. It was right before Psychosis dropped the mask. So I think I reffed that match. And I remember like getting thrown out of the ring. and landing in mud. I'm like, oh, it's a bullfighting arena. This is probably all literally bullshit that is covered in me. So yeah. But as far as international goes, we had gone down to Calexico, which is like a dual city with a city called Mexicali, which is basically California and Mexico share a city. We stayed at a hotel. We wrestled in a parking lot that was part of like a car dealership. I think there was, I think La Raza, the Spanish radio station, was like putting the show on for us, which was super cool. I think, yeah, we stayed in a hotel. It was in California, but the McDonald's was in Mexico. So we literally just crossed the boulevard and then came back. But that would be the extent of international for me right there.
Oh, that's
So-
awesome.
I know
Yeah,
that.
it's super random. It's as interesting as it sounds. I mean, I don't really have anything to brag about, but I mean, that's just some shit that I went through that was kind of cool.
I know that we're in a pandemic right now, and there's not any local wrestling shows going on. But do you ever get the itch to go back into it and get in the ring?
Yes, absolutely. Almost every day of my life. I don't regret not sticking with it because the path I went on with music is irreplaceable. But I've looked several times in the past couple years. I moved from Orange County to North Hollywood about 4 years ago. And I knew there were some schools out here, and I found Rikishi School. I found the, pardon me if I forget their name, Santino Brothers?
Yeah, Santino's.
Santino School out in Bell. I know Lucha Underground is over in Boyle Heights. When I go to work and I'm in that area, I make it a habit to drive by the Lucha Arena just to see it because I'm just a mark like that. I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's the Lucha Arena. I've looked up prices. I've looked up locations. At my gym, the Planet Fitness in Burbank, I was leaving and I saw a guy on a treadmill. And I don't know if he had a pro wrestling shirt or if I just picked up a pro wrestling vibe because of his look and build. I think he had like a long hair mohawk and just like a weird beard, like a kind of like a baby Lance Archer type of thing going on. And I walk past him and then I stop. I take 2 steps back. I point to him. I go like this because he had headphones in. I'm like, do you pro wrestle? He's like, yeah, actually I do. I'm like, where? He's like, oh, I go to Santino Brothers. I'm like, oh, okay, tell me about that because I'm interested in getting back in the game. And this is like January of this year. So we all know what happens a few months later. Everything shuts down. So it's something I want to go back into, if not for a career, which I'm 36 right now. I doubt I would get past the training phase, which is fine. I was in the best shape of my life doing that because it was fun. It wasn't just lifting weights or just running. I mean, you were getting your cardio by lifting people and jumping off of shit. And that's a huge incentive for me to want to get back into it. And if I do some dark matches, if I do some underground matches in a company no one's ever heard of, that would be fine. That would be fun. I'd love to get the footage. I'm like constantly thinking of spots and constantly thinking of finishers. But then I go run for like 2 minutes. I'm like, I am gassed as fuck. I should probably get in shape before I even touch foot inside a building like that. So like, and then the money thing comes up. Like I looked at Rikishi School, it's super reputable, but they want what I would consider for his name a reasonable amount of money that's in the 4 digits up front.
Figured.
Yeah, where the payment plan I had with Revolution Pro was kind of like, this is kind of what we charge. Pay us when you can. Just make sure you pay us. Thanks for being here. And it was real loose. We always paid on time, but it was kind of just like, it was casual for sure. Yeah, that would be the exercise I would love to get back into, if anything, just for the fun and for the getting in the shape part of it. Absolutely, yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You said it long ago, okay, bearded guy with a mohawk. The only one that I know that's big coming from Santino's, either it had to be Brody King, but maybe Brody King.
No. I remember his name. I remember his name because it was super easy. It was Fight Club American Psycho. His name was Tyler Bateman.
There you go, Tyler Bateman. Yes.
Tyler Bateman. I'm like, I know his name because it's like, I love this movie. I love that movie. And he goes, I'm like, what do you wrestle under? He's like, my name's this, but I wrestle as Tyler Bateman. I'm like, I can remember that. Yeah. So that's who I met at my gym, who I could just look at him. I'm like, okay, he's a little He's puffy in the way a pro wrestler would be, and kind of has a pro wrestler vibe going on. So I just shot my shot. And I'm just like, okay, cool. And he, said the school was awesome. But then it comes just down to price and getting there. So that's where I was left at.
Who's the main trainer in Revolution Pro Wrestling? Who was one of the main trainers?
It was American Wild Child, who had trained with like his best friends. His actual best friends were like Halloween, Psychosis, Juventud Guerrera, Blitzkrieg. Basically anybody who was in the LWO. That was his actual crew. I don't know who trained him, but I do know that shortly after I left, he started training these little white dudes from Rancho Cucamonga, these brothers no one had ever heard of, who may someday become famous. I don't know. But once I found out that he trained them from scratch, like they came in from the backyard, their story is just like my story. So I often compare myself to shit I could have been them. But
you could say their name, Chris. You could say their name.
His biggest claim to fame, in my opinion, besides helping Super Dragon at the time, are the Young Bucks.
There you go, the Young Bucks.
The Young Bucks. So I read that about a year ago because I just get lost on Wikipedia. And I'm like, oh, I want to find out about this. I want to find out about that. I'm like, oh, who's every member to ever exist in the Bullet Club? I'm like, oh, I love the Young Bucks. Let me look at the Young Bucks. Rancho Cucamonga, trained by American Wild Child, Revolution Pro. Fuck, that could have been me. I don't hold that against myself. I'm not Al Bundy constantly talking about my 4 touchdowns,
I could have been a contender.
I could have been a contender. Yeah, I don't sit here pining about the past like that. It would have been cool to have kept with it, but I mean, is what it is, man. It didn't happen. I don't regret it. I still watch it every day. I'm still friends with a few of the people from back then. I talk to American Wild Child every now and then on the Facebook. Same with Ultra Taro. I'm sure a few of these people that I've name dropped, which I'm not doing for clout. These are just people that have existed that I know. They probably remember me. If I saw Excalibur, I'd be like, hey, what's up? And then, Mr. Excalibur, I know his real name, not breaking kayfabe.
Right.
I'd be like, oh, dude, I don't know if you remember me. We trained together at Rev Pro. I was just scared. He'd be like, oh, Chris, dude, what's up, man? How you been? I guarantee you that's how it would go down with him, with Super Dragon. Like, they would probably remember me. But I don't use that as a platform to make myself look cooler. I'm not that guy. These are just people that I know. They went on to do very well. I'm super proud of Excalibur. I think it's insane that he gets to sit next to Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone. I think that's crazy. And to see the Young Bucks where they're at, coming out of that same camp, to see all these people that I somehow by proxy are connected with and see them go on that path, that's a crazy story to have been a part of, for sure. Like, I get to tell this particular story that I've only told one other time in an interview on SoCalUncensored.com, which is where the AEW tag team got their name. It's a message board that only talked about the indies run by Mr. Hill at the time. I don't know if he's still in the game.
I believe he still is because the website's still running.
Yeah, I checked it. It's still up. I was like, holy shit, it's still up. It's still doing its damn thing.
Yeah, because they still keep on reporting every indie, SoCal Indies promotions.
Yeah, we grew up on that website. That was our site. Those people came to our shows. They reported on us. I have an interview on that website basically giving a version of this story just while I was in the mask. So, like, to see that there's a team 20 years later paying homage to that little message board that's so niche is awesome. I love seeing that culture still existing in the world right now.
Definitely, because that's what's missing right now in SoCal, and that's what we were, or the goal is obviously here in the podcast is also, help, promote other indie promotions, in Southern California to get them be known. We've seen a lot on the East Coast, a lot of Midwest, and they're being, their local indies promotion being promoted by, their local podcasts, and that's what I would like to do here as well. And for also our viewers around the world, they also, look, they tune in, and then, okay, so whenever they're in California, hopefully when this pandemic is over, they able to reopen these, independencies, in Southern California, so we can, see these performers, getting up there. And I'm hoping that if you get that itch to come back, why not? I mean, shit, I would definitely do it. I would take it.
I want to. I definitely want to. Like, if anything, just to train. I just want to run the ropes again, man. Like, I'm not a tough guy. I'm not emotionally, like, at all. Like, I have feelings and such, but like, it takes a lot to get me to cry, and it's usually a happy feeling that gets me to cry. If I were to ever run the ropes again, I probably would shed a tear. I would get on the apron. I'd wipe my feet. I'd bow. I would do my first run. I would bend over gassed because of my shitty cardio, because it's been 20 years. And I would probably cry a little bit. I'd be like, it all comes back. It's like, like the shit I was able to do back in the day, like, I can't believe I was able to do some of those things, like backflips, front flips over ropes. Like, I was basically like a Jeff Hardy wannabe at the time, because I was such a mark. Like, I looked up to the Flyers. I looked up to like the original Kid Cash, like the Evan Courageous's, name drop. That's obscure. That style, because I was like a smaller, skinny, white blonde guy. So I looked up to other blonde guys that were doing backflips. So like, I modeled my style after that. And being able to say that I could do some of those moves at the time is like, holy shit, man! I'd like to see some footage of that. It was pretty crazy.
That's
awesome. I think the other question we wanted to ask you, it's because you talked a little bit about Rick Knox. Was there any what was your interactions like with him, and then your referee training like?
I never met Rick Knox. I never went to his school. I know that I don't remember why people from his school came to our school. We were in the Norwalk indoor swap meet at the time off of Pioneer. Best pizza on the planet, by the way. RIP that building. Dude, swap meet pizza, fuck, I don't care what's in it. That shit was fire every single time. We got paid in pizza and we loved it. I don't know. They just showed up. And they were like, I think maybe we were doing like cross promotion, or maybe like they wanted to wrestle against us. I remember they showed up and they had the American psychology style of wrestling, which I didn't know about. So they were talking to me about, oh, here's how you tell a story in the ring. And like, you don't know this? I'm like, no, this is the style they taught us. Yeah, you're supposed to do this, like, here's where this happens, here's where this happens. This is supposed to happen, and then you go home. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I apologize that the lucha style might be different. I know what I was taught. And so, that was basically the extent of my interaction with anything to do with that school. I never wrestled Scorpio Sky. I don't know who else came down. I know it was more than just him. Quicksilver. There was a guy named Quicksilver. That was the other one. I don't think he went past the indie phase. I apologize if he did, and he changed his name. I didn't keep up with him. Scorpio is the only person that I know actually branched out onto like television. So if there's a Quicksilver out there that's from San Bernardino, the trade with Rick Knox, and he's super famous, I'm sorry, I just didn't know that.
He's in Retribution now.
Is he really?
No, I'm joking.
Hardball or
Slapjack.
He's Hardball or Tank Girl or Fire Pyro or Crowbar or whatever pirate name is.
Did you ever have the opportunity when you met Excalibur? This is before he even started with Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, right? Because obviously, Revolution Pro was the main founder. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, was one of the mains in the indie scenes in California before pro wrestling started, right? Or how did that all begin? Like when you met Excalibur, and
they already were training at Revolution Pro. I don't know if they got started there. I really doubt Super Dragon had done that. I think Super Dragon was trained by Blitzkrieg. That is correct. Blitzkrieg was best friends with American Wild Child. When I had started at Revolution Pro, Super Dragon was coming back from a tour of Japan. I don't know what companies in Japan he had toured with, but I knew he had injured his knee and was on the sidelines when I showed up and could only train lightly. And basically, he trained all his flippy moves off a diving board into a pool at his house, and that's all he could do. So I think most of those people already knew how to wrestle or were trained by the team at Rev Pro before Rev Pro was a thing. but I do suspect towards the end of my career with Rev Pro, I don't want to speak ill of something I don't know. There was a reason that these people separated and started Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. I don't know if there was conflict. I don't know if there was a clash of ideas. I don't know if they just wanted to start their own thing. But I know that that main group at Rev Pro that featured Excalibur, Top Gun Talwar, and Excalibur, I know they had left, started Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. And I don't know how much longer Rev Pro existed. I know the Young Bucks definitely went through there after I left, so it could have been a couple of years. I don't know the exact time frame, but Pro Wrestling Guerrilla definitely, as you all know, blew the fuck up quick. Based out of Frankensons, I think, first for a while. One of my best friends at the time, Jason McCord, that's his real name, and that's the name he went by, is one of the best referees SoCal has ever seen. I know he did a lot at Rev Pro, I believe. I still talk to him all the time. And then the guy I started in the backyard wrestling with, this is a flashback to a guy named Buddy. He became Buddy George. That was his pro wrestling gimmick. He was kind of like a overalls, oh shucks, big brawly Bubba Ray Dudley white guy, just like smashing people. He went on to train and wrestle out of a company, I think it was based in Torrance, and he went by the name Axel George, I think. I can look this up real quick. What was that company?
In Torrance.
Torrance.
Oh man, I gotta his Facebook.
I think I know which one he's talking about. They
I
had
think it was
a Pentagon versus RVD card once.
What was his?
Oh wait, you talking about Pacific Coast Wrestling?
That might have been it. I'm looking at his
Yeah, because
real quick.
I think they believe they started like 3 years ago, I believe, or a little bit longer. They were just pretty brand new. They were up.
This might have been a little bit longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna see. I'm looking right now. He doesn't have his. Let's see here. Axel George. I think that was his ring name. Nope. Damn.
Yeah,
How long ago do you think this was?
10 years ago, maybe less.
Oh, okay.
It was. I think it was after Rev Pro kind of petered out, and he had to move on somewhere because he stepped with it. Let's see here. Axel. Look, I know he's got a pro wrestling profile. Axel Walker. That's his name. That was his ring name that he changed it to. And Axel Walker wrestled for. Doesn't show. let me type that into Google. Axel Walker Pro Wrestling. PPW? Nope, that's not it. I don't know. That's a rabbit hole right there that I'm probably not going to go down.
Right.
Just because it's like there's just so many people named Axel in the pro wrestling world.
Chris, what was your referee training like?
Oh, that was super simple. I just knew what to do because I watched a lot of pro wrestling, and they said just go ref this match, and this is the finish, and then just call it. I'm like, perfect. That was it. It was basically just do what you see on TV, which was not a problem because I was very look, see, do oriented. If I had seen somebody do something that wasn't a super complicated move, I kind of knew how to do it. Like the first time I ever did a backdrop, I didn't train it. I'd never done it before in training. The guys, he called the spot in the middle of the match. He's like, Irish whip, shoot off the ropes, backdrop. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I've never done it before. Just do what it looks like. Nailed it. So it was kind of like that with reffing as well. I just had seen it. I knew what to do. And I got thrown right into the fire for that one.
That's pretty amazing. It's really rare, like some people getting to learn that way, especially like, I think one thing when I was listening to Jim Ross's biography, he talked about like when you're supposed to ignore when a heel cheats, stuff like that.
I got a story for you on that when you're done.
I'm ready. I'm
gonna let you finish, but first,
tell me.
Okay, so the only time I ever fucked up, I was good. I did not fuck up at all. It's hard to fuck up a wrestling match when you know the finish. Kayfabe. The only time I ever fucked up, it was Disco Machine versus, I believe, Mr. Excitement. Mr. Excitement was awesome. That dude was like, man, what was he like? It was like a really fast, in shape Taz. Like imagine Taz if he was like really fast. He was just like, his finisher was the Exploder. That was the first time I ever seen the Exploder. I was like, oh shit. So the finish was something to do with the suplex. I think it was a brainbuster. I think Disco Machine gave a brainbuster. I think it was like the Pearl River Plunge. It was a brainbuster with the fisherman hook. And that's the finish.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
He goes up on the ropes. What's up?
You froze a little
for half
bit.
second.
But go ahead.
Okay, cool. Am I here?
Yeah,
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. So the finish, the person losing is all tangled up in the ropes. Feet are clearly in the ropes. I'm on the side of the ropes that the audience is on. I know the rules. If they're in the ropes, it breaks the count. I know the audience can see me. I know the audience can see the ropes. Guess what I do? 1, 2. He's in the ropes. 2 count. Disco Machine gets the fuck up, suplexes my ass because he was legitimately pissed off that I fucked up the finish. But so did he. He got him in the ropes. So I got 2 different kinds of ear beatings. He picked them. I think he like did some other finisher, finished the match. I counted to 3. In the back, I get 2 different types of ear beatings. If I know the finish, fuck the rules, do the finish. Also, you're right. I'm sorry. It does make the ref look bad. You have to understand that that is the finish. But next time, I'm gonna make sure that he's not in the ropes. So I sort of did the right thing. So it's like I was torn on my feelings. I did the right thing, but also I fucked up that original finish. I don't know how that particular incident would have held on a bigger stage if it was like WWE. If that was like Charles Robinson and AJ Styles was in the ropes, would he have called the 2 count? Or would he have just had to have been like, I didn't see it, 3 count? But that was the one time I can tell a story where I know I fucked up, essentially a finish of some kind. But it wasn't entirely my fault. I take half the blame on that one. But that was about it. Most of the time I did a good job. I had ref the Super J tournament, which was a one-night tournament at the Anaheim Marketplace. And I remember it was some match. It was like Frankie Kazarian versus the Brian Kendrick at the time was going by Spanky. And they're fast. And I remember like I was in the way of a move, but I back rolled, you know, because that's the actual training move you do when you do your warm-ups is you do like a back roll. And I did that and I got up immediately and I counted a 2 count. And when I went backstage, somebody was like, dude, that back roll to dodge that move to get out of the way of these guys, that's awesome. That was some good reffing right there. I was like, dope. Thank you. Compliments are good. I like hearing this from literally everybody who was older than me. Everybody. I mean, I started when I was 14, ended when I was 16. So I was definitely the kid on that roster for sure.
That's awesome. And when you were training at the time with, you know, Revolution Pro, who else was the students that you remember alongside with you? And do you know if any of them are still currently, you know, wrestling at this moment, or they all like just?
At the time, it was me, Buddy George, who I had grown up in the backyard wrestling with. I can't remember anybody else who started with me, like, let's say that day, like he did, because he and I showed up the same day. He drove me there. He drove me to every practice in his shitty green pickup truck. It was awesome. But other people that had come up from little to no training was a guy named Shogun, who was best friends with Excalibur and Super Dragon, I believe. I don't know if he stuck with it. I don't know if he wrestled in PWG at all. I think he might have had a few matches. There was a guy named Top Gun Tall War who had a huge role in starting PWG. I think he was huge on the executive side. He had started wrestling from scratch. Man, who else was there? I can't think of anybody else who started from scratch who had came up with me that didn't already exist within the company or within like the business. There are people that had come and gone. Like we had a lot of interactions with a dude named B-Boy, which hopefully if you're about SoCal wrestling, you know B-Boy. He had like a breakdancer gimmick.
Nice.
Yeah,
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was a Filipino gentleman who was awesome. He had some sick matches with Super Dragon. He was the first person I'd ever seen do a backflip off a wall onto the cement or off like a turn post, but on the outside. I was like, oh, this is some next level shit right here. Yeah, I was like, oh, this dude's the shit. I love B-Boy. This dude was fun to watch.
I'm gonna look that up now.
Matt Sinister had wrestled with us. He was a big trainer. That's a name I should pay some respect to. A big dude named Matt Sinister, who was kind of like a 400-pound Triple H at the time. He and we were good friends. He would throw me around that ring. I mean, I was probably 5'11", 150 pounds. He was the opposite of that. He was like 11 feet, 500 pounds at the time. And he would beat the shit out of me, not maliciously. I think he looked at me kind of like, if he can take these beatings, he can stay. Kind of like in a friendly hazing kind of way. Like we had a match in FMLL. I don't remember where this was at. And the match is basically me running in the ring, hitting my finisher, and then getting powerbombed 3 times, stiff as a board, because lucha rings are not cushioned. Because it's not a big bump sport there. It's a lot of rolls, a lot of flips, a lot of leverage. So he's giving me his finisher, which was basically not the jackknife where he lets go at the top. He pulls you down.
Oh.
I took two of those and I was rocked. I was lucky by the third one to remember to bump. I was like, okay, I just need to remember to go like this on the third one and I'll live. And yeah, that was my first experience with what a lucha ring was. And it was because he was doing the same thing we had always done. He always liked to ragdoll me and make me just, Spike Dudley my ass all over the ring. And like I said, not to be a dick, but to, kind of break me in, but to have fun. And I loved it. It was great. We played this super fucked up trick on my mom, who would come to training every now and then. And this is a funny story. He sees her come in. He's like, your mom's here. Sell everything for me like you're dying. And he's throwing me across the ring. He's Irish whipping me pillar to post. I'm flying into these things. It's loud. He's clotheslining the shit out of me. I'm flipping onto my neck. He's power bombing me. I'm just lifeless the whole time. Like, I'm not doing anything. I'm barely on one knee for any of this. And she starts freaking out a little bit. She's like, no. Like, she legitimately started to get worried. And then she just starts with the power bombs, endless power bombs. She's like, stop it, like yelling at it. I think she was legitimately yelling at him, and I think almost to tears. And then by like the last power bomb, I'm like, oh, and she comes over to the ring, and I'm just like, I'm like basically out. And she comes over to the ring. I wait for her to go to grab me, and I go, gotcha. And she's like, you motherfuckers. We both start laughing our asses off, and that was fun because that was a good practice in selling for sure. But like, I had my mom convinced. I mean, she's biased. I was her son, or am her son.
Was
like,
I adopted you
after that match?
After that match, she's like, you're no longer my son.
You're done.
That was my daddy. That was. I remember that specifically because like I was like, oh, this is really good selling. I know how to sell because I had her convinced, and she was genuinely almost brought to tears. And yeah, that was fun. I don't know what happened to him after that, after Ref Pro. I don't know if he kept with it or not. But Matt Sinister had a big role in just making me feel. It didn't feel like a business. It felt like a family. I mean, that sounds cliche and corny, but we all kind of. It didn't just feel like we were going to a gym with people who you didn't know. It felt like we all kind of knew each other and had dynamics with each other that were friendly and looked out for each other. There's a few people I don't want to bring up that I can say definitely had it out for me. One in particular, because I guess I was late on a payment for some gear that I didn't know I was buying from him. And he stiffed the fuck out of me in a match, and I didn't know why. Like, he hit me with like a spin kick, like Black Mass.
Oh.
And it missed. No, it didn't miss. It wasn't to his liking. It landed perfectly. but he was trying to send a message
Mm.
or something I didn't know. So he hits me with it stiff, literally stiff, potatoes the shit out. He hits me with it like you would in an MMA fight. And I remember seeing something that wasn't there, whether it was black or white. I was rocked. And I remember just saying his name and going like, "You're killing me. Like, you're killing." I was literally trying to tell him, like, stop. Like, I'm fucking fading right now, bro. Like, I'm 16. You're a giant buff man. I'm losing consciousness. I was like, I said his name. I said his kayfabe name. Let's just say John. It's not John. I was like, "John, you're killing me." Those are literally the only words I can mutter. And he does it again. And I was out, and he hits me with his finisher, Splash Mountain. Hint, hint. That's his finisher. I later find out, like, and then he just, like, stormed off, and I don't know. And then, like, someone told me, like, yeah, at a practice, he was talking to everybody about selling some shin guards, and he said, "Oh, that'd be dope. I'd love some shin guards." And apparently, I didn't know I was supposed to meet up with him afterwards in the parking lot and pay him for them.
Mm.
I was like, I'm 16. I don't have 80 fucking bucks, bro. So, like, Jason McCord, my best friend at the time, and like ref extraordinaire, he had paid him the next day just to get him off my back, and he still hit me with those stiff shots in the ring. I was like, I never told him I was gonna pay him for him. I just said that'd be cool to have him. And that was the one time where that made me start thinking, like, I don't like this. That wasn't cool. Like, I don't know, like, I don't like being picked on. I mean, who does? But it doesn't take much for me to be like, fuck it, I'm out, as far as, like, when people start bullying me. Like, it happened in high school a little bit. And then when I started seeing it happen a little bit there with that particular incident, I didn't lose my love for the sport. I was just like, I'm not excited to show up if this guy's going to be around, because I don't know the next time he's going to fucking take it out of context and fuck my day up, and I can do nothing about it because this is a full-grown man. But that was one of the things where I was like, I don't miss not going. Like, that was the only time I was ever stiffed for real. Like, Matt Sinister had stiffed me a few times in some matches as a learning lesson. Like, I took a bump in a battle royale and he stepped on my fucking head. He's like, listen, yeah. And he's like, I'm like, he pulled me, but afterwards he pulled me aside. He's like, I want you to know that I did that to make you remember to never do that. Because if somebody's in there and they don't see you on the ground when there's 30 other people, you can get stepped on by accident for real and die. I'm like, I never bumped in a battle royale ever again. You know, he was looking out for me. But yeah, that particular incident, I was just like, that was scary. Like, I'd never been rocked before in my life. I'd never seen whatever it is I was seeing. It was black, it was white at the same time. It was just like, and that was close to the end of when I started going. I don't know if it's related to my decision to stop going at all, but it definitely didn't help. Getting hazed on and stiff like that it definitely changes your perspective on what you're doing in that ring.
Wow, definitely. So, I mean, so now after your wrestling career, so what is it? What did you pursue next after pro wrestling?
That was before my high school years ended. This all happened my sophomore and junior year of high school. So it was a lot to take in for those 2 years. So since then, I basically, after I got out of high school, went right to the workforce because I needed a job. And then a couple years after that, I started seriously getting into music, and that's the path I went down. I was in a few bands before I was in a band that actually went anywhere. I was in that band for about 7 years. Once that band disbanded, I moved out here to North Hollywood, and my only hobbies now basically include writing music, trying to get the band thing started, trying to record and write at home, play a lot of video games during quarantine, and I try to balance my video game time with my music time because I don't want to be a lazy fuck. But that's it, man. Like, my two passions are pro wrestling, video games, and music. And that basically is the long and short version of that story. I'm sure I can think of other stories within that one to tell if we have time, but like, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh, wow, man. All right, so let me ask you this. Who's your, right now, since you've been watching the current state of pro wrestling, who's your favorite right now?
Jesus Christ, man, fuck.
Yeah, right. That's a tough one, huh?
Yeah, it is tough because like it doesn't change per se. It's just who I'm entertained by their angle at the time.
Our truth.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. All of Wrong Killings on TikTok. It is the best TikTok on the planet. It is pure comedy, start to finish.
What's up? What's up?
Yeah. Like, I'll always love Jericho. Jericho's been in my top 5 since the list. And I don't mean that you just made the list. I mean the list of 1,002 holds.
You just made the list.
No, I'm talking 20 years ago. I'm talking about like
Armbar.
With
Armbar.
Ralphus and the 3-handled family Cardunza Jericho.
Let me tell you something, Skiabone.
Yeah,
It's a
that
conspiracy.
But right now, man, Jesus Christ. I mean, I don't know. Like, I just like angles. Like, I like Kenny Omega. I like AJ. I like the whatever the fuck they're doing with Aleister Black right now before the eye thing, when they actually let people wrestle. Okada in Japan, especially the trifecta with Kenny Omega, was the shit. I like Kid Sabian. Besides him getting on the mic, that dude can wrestle. I remember him doing all those cruiserweight tournaments and shit like that.
Right.
I really like Anna Jay, and not for visual reasons, but like she actually looks like she's trying to wrestle. Yeah, and I'm not trying to say that there's a lot of females in the companies that don't, but I can actually see her like becoming.
See the potential.
Yeah, I can see her wanting to become a great. And that's not trying to say with other female wrestlers that they're not.
Well, there's an obvious one right there. We know
she just has she has a mean streak. Like she's definitely like she's coming to kill you, and I like that.
Definitely.
I mean, we see you like the man on your shirt right there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We know you love Becky.
I love Becky. Becky's great. Becky's entertaining. And I'm not just like a mark for a particular company. I like individuals and then companies. I'll always watch WWE, but like I had to stop Raw halfway through. I was like, all right. I'm like, oh, that's right. There's a Dynamite on Tuesday. I'm just gonna go watch that, and I'll watch ups and downs on Raw. So
right.
it comes and goes. You know, there's been some lulls in the company. I basically didn't watch WWF, WWE, the entire CM Punk / these are the real reasons, Vicky Guerrero / John Cena spinner belt. I didn't watch during any of that. I was just not into it. I was like, this is fucking garbage. But I came back when NXT showed up. I'm like, oh, NXT? Oh, I'll watch this. Oh my God, this is like ECW without the trash cans. I love it. So yeah, I definitely always will find content I enjoy. There's just so much out there that trying to balance it all between the American companies. I've even tried to get into TNA again. I like that Eric Young is their champion. That's pretty sick. After what happened with him and
WWE.
Yeah, with Sanity, I was like, oh man, Sanity could have been Retribution. That should have been Sanity's angle.
I agree.
I agree. There's no reason that you got like 3 dudes and some girls. Like that's Sanity. Just that should have been their angle. I don't know if they didn't have that idea or what, but they totally just whiffed on the Sanity angle, man. That was
Papa Vinny, man. He sleeps on that shit.
It is what it is, man. You can't do much. It's all Vince, and that's. I mean, he's doing something right because he's the first billionaire in sports. So
yeah, that's very true.
Oh! I love Dexter Lumis.
Oh yes.
Yeah. It sucks that he got injured that quickly, right before that North American title shot. I think he was going to win that before the Archer and Anthony won that. Damian Priest. That would have been a sick feud. That would have been like 2 anti-heroes going up against each other.
Definitely.
I went back and watched all of the TNA content with Dexter Lumis. In a nutshell, there's like a highlight reel of him in TNA when he was Sam something or other.
Yeah, I forgot.
Sam Shaw. He was also in the NWA 70 tournament with the national championship.
Yeah. So I went back and watched a 20-minute highlight reel of his promos and his some of his condensed angles and his wrestling. I'm like, oh, he would have been my favorite. I should have been watching TNA, first of all, at that time, because that would have been my favorite wrestler of all time during the modern era, had I have been aware of that character at the time. That's the shit. I know it's basically just Ted Bundy, but it is so sick. And what he does in the ring with his with his moveset that translates to that character is super original. I just love where he went with that, and I wish him well. Hope you come back soon. Don't front flip over ropes. Just saying.
That's right.
You're not Ricochet. You're like 250 pounds, homie. Like you were all big.
Yeah, you're not lightweight, bro.
Yeah.
So you can just let know our viewers, Chris, where can they actually find you. I'm actually going to put it in the description below as well. But go ahead and let them know your social media platforms so they can actually, look you up.
Right now I'm focusing on my Instagram, which is all guitar related stuff because that's the only other thing I'm good at. So you can find me at Chris Kennedy Guitars. I have a YouTube channel that I should keep up to more often. I'm just lazy about it. And that's just United States of Chris. I don't have enough followers or subscribers to have my own URL. But if you type in United States of Chris, you might find me. But the Instagram is where I'm putting all of my focus. And if there's enough content that I can port over to YouTube, I might do that. But that's basically where I'm living right now as far as social media content goes.
Alrighty, definitely. Well, I do really appreciate the time, Mr. Kennedy, for joining us, and hopefully you join us on the top 5. We'll see if you have the time for it. But definitely. We're gonna do the top 5. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, and hopefully we'll be seeing Chris more along the way every week. Hopefully he comes join us. Maybe we can discuss about what's going on in the current state of pro wrestling. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for the top 5 on Sunday. Keep an eye on that, which we're going to be discussing about their top 5 who should have been world champion. So stay tuned for that. Once again,
we're gonna be excited.
Yeah, once again, this is
that's a good one.
Yep. So we're gonna be talking about that. So once again, this is the Devious One I've seen, alongside with the Great American Hero Mike Lopez, the Cardonas, the Saitos, the Murphys, and the Max Kellerman. I'm glad he hasn't said anything today yet to piss me off. He probably will in the top 5. But thank you so much.
Definition of player hating.
There you go. Yeah, you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So stay tuned on Sunday. Thank you so much for joining.